Everything started in the middle of chaos, red lights flashing, screams ringing out, and my son Ethan, 16, being shoved onto a golf cart by two guys in fake uniforms. I stood there, rake in hand, mind spinning, thinking, wait, what the hell? How are they doing this without breaking the law? And why didn't I see it sooner? The rake hit the ground, and I bolted toward the gate, legs pumping, yelling, "Get your hands off him now!" In a mix of panic and fist-ready rage, I just wanted to smash that insane scene to pieces, but let me rewind a bit, before everything went haywire. I'm Tom Carver, living on 12 beautiful acres in Oak Hollow, Texas, about 40 minutes from Austin. I bought this land back when people still called this place the middle of nowhere, before anyone thought to build a fancy named subdivision. My land's full of tall pines, sprawling pastures, and air so fresh you can hear the wind rustling through the leaves. I came here for the quiet to raise chickens, fix up the red pinewood barn I built myself, and live a life with no one butting in. On weekends, I'd grill steaks in the yard with Ethan, smoke rising and mixing with the pine sap scent from the nearby woods. Those were the days when me and the kids steered clear of any trouble. Ethan's everything to me. He's 16, lanky with messy brown hair, living with me after the divorce. Early mornings, I'd brew coffee, sit on the porch watching the fog lift, while he'd shuffle out to feed the chickens, bucket in hand, mumbling some song. He loves filming, chickens, fences, anything out in the fields. "Dad, I'm gonna make a movie about this place someday," he once said, making me laugh hard. I didn't need anything more than those moments, just me, Ethan, and the peace of Oak Hollow. But then trouble came. 3 years ago, whispering pines sprang up on the other side of the tree line, like a patch of toxic mushrooms erupting. Identical houses, decorative streetlights, and an HOA calling itself so powerful you'd think they were running an underground government. I didn't sign anything with them. My land predates that neighborhood, predates their club and their ridiculous rules. I figured if I didn't bother them they'd leave me alone. But I was dead wrong. Linda Grayson was the one behind it all. She lived in the biggest house at the entrance of Whispering Pines, drove an SUV with a Letty Lynn plate, wore tennis skirts like she was auditioning for a reality TV show. The first time she knocked on my door, holding a compliance packet, that's when it all started. "Your barn's not aesthetically compliant," she said, her tone commanding. "The chickens are noisy, and your kid isn't registered." I laughed out loud, told her straight, "You've got the wrong house, the wrong person, and the wrong authority." Linda didn't like that. From then on, she launched a harassment campaign, passive-aggressive letters, anonymous complaints to the county, and trash dumped near my fence. Classic Linda warfare. Before things escalated, our life was peaceful days. I loved sitting on the porch, hearing the chickens cluck and the wind blow through the woods. Ethan loved running out to the fields, checking the fences, filming videos with that phone always glued to him. My brother Ray Carver, the county sheriff, dropped by sometimes. Ray's tall, deep-voiced, carrying the weight of the law. Ethan loved hearing Uncle Ray tell stories about weird cases in town. "Are you the Knight of Oak Hollow, Uncle?" he'd teased once, making Ray laugh hard. That was our life, peaceful, simple, until Linda and Whispering Pines turned it into a nightmare. After that day Linda Grayson knocked on my door with her compliance packet in hand, I knew peace in Oak Hollow was officially under threat. She wasn't the type to back off, not after being shut down like that. I'd told her she had the wrong house, wrong person, wrong authority, but Linda just stared at me, with narrowed eyes like I'd challenged her entire world. "You'll regret not cooperating," she said, voice icy, before turning on her heel and heading back to her shiny SUV with the Letty Lynn plate. I stood on the porch, holding a cold coffee mug, thinking, regret what? I didn't sign up for your stupid club. But I underestimated how relentless Linda could be. Whispering Pines wasn't just a new neighborhood, it was a declaration of war on my quiet. Identical houses popped up like mushrooms after rain, with white walls, red-tiled roofs, and decorative streetlights I'd bet no one needed in this rural stretch. Their HOA, led by Linda, acted like they owned the whole county, not just the 50 acres they built on. Linda lived in the biggest house right at the entrance, a 2-story with a 3-car garage and huge white columns screaming, "Look at me." She drove that SUV everywhere, wore pristine white tennis skirts like she was auditioning for a reality show, and always had oversized sunglasses on even when it wasn't sunny. Ethan once joked, "Dad, does she think she's the queen of Oak Hollow?" I laughed hard, said, "Maybe, but that kingdom's not real, son." Things started escalating after that first knock. Linda didn't come back right away, but I started getting letters handwritten, passive-aggressive notes, stuffed in my mailbox or taped to my fence. "Your chicken coop violates community standards," one said, even though I'm across a forest from her area. "The rooster noise disturbs residents," another claimed, making me wonder who's idle enough to stand in the fields listening to my chickens crow. I tore up the letters, tossed them in the trash, thinking it was just childish nonsense, but then real trash showed up, bags full of beer cans and orange peels dumped right near my eastern fence. I had no proof it was Linda, but the stench stuck in my head like her fingerprint. Ethan noticed the antics before I did. One morning, he ran inside, phone in hand, face flushed. "Dad, someone messed with the fence last night. 2 chickens got out." I went to check. Sure enough, a few wooden slats were kicked down, muddy boot prints still fresh in the dirt. Ethan and I spent the morning rounding up the chickens, fixing the fence under the blazing sun. "Probably some kids from the new neighborhood," I said, trying to stay calm. But Ethan shook his head, showed me a video he'd recorded, a blurry figure in the dark, near where the trash was dumped the day before. "I bet Linda hired someone," he said, voice firm. I laughed, patted his shoulder. "You've been watching too many detective movies, kid." But Linda didn't stop there. She started playing bigger. One day, I saw a guy in a cheap suit standing outside my gate, snapping photos of the coop and my house. When I confronted him, he mumbled something about compliance checks and bolted. The next week, I got a letter from the county, citing an anonymous complaint about my coop lacking a permit. I called to ask. Turns out no one knew who filed it, but I'd bet 100% it was Linda pulling strings. She wanted to turn my life into hell, one step at a time. I tried to stay calm. I didn't want a war with that ridiculous HOA. My land is mine, not part of Whispering Pines, not Linda's, not anyone's but me and Ethan's. I just wanted to raise chickens, grill steaks and live in peace. 10 minutes later, I heard Ethan call from the coop. "Dad, I think they're about to cross a line." I turned, saw him standing there, hands full of chicken feed, eyes lit with worry. "Dad, I just saw 2 guys from Whispering Pines lurking near the fence. I think they're up to something." I sighed, knowing Linda and her goons were about to take things to a new level, and this time, they'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. That morning started like any other in Oak Hollow. I woke up early, brewed coffee in the old pot, sat on the porch listening to the roosters crow from the red coop out back. Ethan shuffled outside, bucket of feed in hand, phone tucked in his pocket as usual. He liked starting the day checking the chickens and fences, a routine he called, keeping things steady. After Linda Grayson's and Whispering Pines harassment stunts, I told him to keep a closer eye out, but I didn't expect trouble to hit so fast. I was raking grass near the gate, when I heard an odd noise, tires crunching on gravel, mixed with men's voices barking orders. I looked up, saw a white golf cart, the kind neighborhoods use, tearing across the field from Whispering Pines' side. On it were 2 guys, one tall bald wearing mirrored sunglasses, with a gut like he'd just left a weekend softball game, the other shorter skinny, with a nervous face like he was doing something he shouldn't. They wore dark blue uniforms with Whispering Pines security stitched on the chest, but the logo looked cheap like it came off a home printer. I thought, wait, what the hell, who gave them the right to roam my land? Before I could react, Ethan yelled from the coop, "Dad, they're doing something to me." I spun around, saw the 2 guys had jumped off the cart, grabbing Ethan. The tall one shoved him toward the cart, gripping his shoulder hard, while the skinny one held his other arm. Ethan struggled, trying to pull out his phone, but the tall guy barked, "Stay still, kid, you're trespassing." I dropped the rake, bolted for the gate, legs pumping, shouting, "Get your hands off him now." My heart pounded, half in disbelief, half ready to smash both their faces. When I got close, the tall guy, I'll call him Beer Gut, turned to me, not even blinking. "He's trespassing," he growled, like that justified grabbing a 16-year-old. This is Whispering Pines property, and we're authorized to detain for violations. I froze, breathing hard, looking at Ethan, still held tight, chicken feed stuck to his shirt, face red with anger and fear. Authorized my ass, I yelled. This isn't Whispering Pines land, this is my land, and you just touched my son. The skinny one, I'll call him Nervous, glanced at the golf cart like he wanted to bolt, but Beer Gut stayed stubborn. We've got orders from Linda, he said, like he was reciting a script. This kid wouldn't give his name, and tried to run. Ethan, standing there in muddy sneakers, looked at me, eyes half wanting to laugh, half wanting to punch someone. I didn't run, he said, voice tight. I was feeding the chickens when they jumped me. I stepped forward, wedging myself between them and Ethan, pushing Beer Gut back. This isn't HOA land, I said, voice cold as stone. You just grabbed a kid on camera, on private property. That's kidnapping, and impersonating officers too. Nervous went pale, stepping back. We're just following Linda's orders, he muttered, like that'd save him from trouble. Of course you are, I shot back, resisting the urge to deck Beer Gut's fat belly. I turned to Ethan, you okay? He nodded, brushing dirt off his jeans, trying to act cool. I'm fine, Dad, but I think they wanted my phone. He handed it to me, screen still on. The video captured the whole thing, from them jumping off the cart to me charging in. Oh perfect, I said, smirking, we've got it all. I turned back to the two guys. Beer Gut still stood there, shoulders squared like he wanted a fight, but Nervous had retreated to the cart, hands shaking. Get out of here now, I said, voice calm but sharp, and tell Linda she just crossed every line. They didn't say another word, climbed onto the cart, and sped off, leaving a dust cloud over the pasture. Ethan stood beside me, panting. Dad, they're seriously crazy, he said, voice still shaky but tinged with disbelief. I clapped his shoulder. Yeah, but they picked the wrong people to mess with, son. As we walked back to the house, I knew this wasn't over. Linda wasn't the type to give up easily, and those two were just pawns. But I had Ethan, the video, and my brother, Ray Carver, the county sheriff. I thought to myself, just wait, Linda, your game's about to end. After those two goons from Whispering Pines attacked Ethan, I knew Linda Grayson wouldn't let it slide. She wasn't the type to lose without hitting back, and I was right. Just 2 hours after I chased off Beer Gut and Nervous, I heard the familiar rumble of an SUV engine from the gravel road. I stood on the porch, holding a cold coffee mug, watching Linda step out, clutching a clipboard, phone pressed to her ear like she had a hotline to the Supreme Court. Ethan was in the kitchen, still reviewing the video on his phone, face still tense from the ordeal. Dad, she's here, he called, voice laced with sarcasm. I sighed, knowing the show was about to start. Linda marched up, white tennis skirt fluttering, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, striding through the gate like she owned the place. Your son was caught trespassing in a restricted area, she said, skipping any greeting, tone like she was reading an indictment. He's now banned from all Whispering Pines common areas, and we're issuing a $250 fine for non-compliance. I stood there, staring at her, then down at the grass near the coop, where Ethan got grabbed a few hours ago. That's my chicken coop, I said, slowly, like explaining to a child. On my land, which you've trespassed on for the second time today. Linda blinked, but didn't flinch. We've updated the HOA boundaries to include this area, she replied, voice flat like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. You'll see it mapped out in our spring newsletter. I couldn't hold it in, burst out laughing, the kind that made Ethan poke his head out from the kitchen door to see what was up. You just redrew private property lines like it's a map drawing game. I asked, hands on hips. You think you can claim people's land like it's some island in the sea? Linda tilted her nose up, that arrogance I'd seen since day one. The board voted, she said. Majority rules, you understand. I shook my head, at a loss for words with that insane logic. Linda handed me a sheet of paper, what she called a violation notice, printed on cheap stock, text jumbled like a middle schooler's project. I'll frame this, I said, holding it by 2 fingers like it might stain me. It's the funniest thing I've seen all month. Linda's face shifted, from smug to strained, lips pursed tight. Actions have consequences, she said, voice dropping, full of menace. You'll see. I looked her dead in the eye, unflinching. Kidnapping a kid and impersonating officers have consequences too, I shot back. You'll see. Linda spun around, stalking back to her car in a cloud of cheap perfume and wounded pride. I heard her mutter something about the law as she slammed the SUV door and peeled out, tires kicking up gravel dust. Ethan stepped onto the porch, still holding his phone. "She's really nuts, Dad," he said, voice a mix of shock and irritation. "She said I trespassed, but I was standing on our land." I clapped his shoulder. "Yeah, she lives in her own world, son, but we've got the video, and that's something she didn't count on." I went inside, set the notice on the kitchen table, watched Ethan sit across from me. He was still a little shaky, though trying to play it off. "You okay?" I asked again, needing to be sure. "I'm fine," he said, brushing his hands on his jeans like wiping away the memory of being grabbed. "But Dad, she's not gonna stop. I bet she'll do something worse." I nodded, knowing he was right. Linda didn't just want fines or intimidation, she wanted control, and we were the thorn in her side. I took a sip of cold coffee, thinking about the next move. "We've got the video," I said, looking at Ethan. "And we've got Uncle Ray. She doesn't know she just stirred a hornet's nest." Ethan smirked. "Uncle Ray's gonna scare her silly." I nodded, thinking to myself that Linda might think she's the queen of Whispering Pines, but she was about to face real law, not her HOA clown show. After Linda Grayson stormed off in a huff and a cloud of gravel dust, I knew it was time to act. She didn't just cross the line by sending 2 goons to attack Ethan, she had the gall to stand on my land, handing out nonsense notices like she had the right to judge. I went inside, set my coffee mug on the kitchen table, watched Ethan sitting there, still fiddling with his phone. He'd just been through a crazy morning, but his eyes lit up talking about the video. "Dad, we've got proof," he said, voice tinged with pride. "I got it all, from when those guys jumped out to when you chased them off." I nodded, thinking to myself that Linda didn't know she'd just dug her own grave. I grabbed my phone, dialed Ray Carver, my brother, the county sheriff. Ray picked up after 2 rings, his deep Texas thick voice rumbling through. "Tom, what's up calling this early? Don't tell me your chickens ran off to the neighbors again." I gave a weak laugh, but wasn't in the mood to joke. "No, Ray, this is bigger. 2 guys from Whispering Pines just grabbed Ethan on my land, shoved him on a golf cart, claiming trespassing. I've got video, and I need you to take a look." There was a pause on the other end, then Ray sighed. "Those HOA wannabes at it again. Send me the video, I'll check it. But keep your cool, don't punch anyone before I get there." "Got it." I ran through the whole story, from when I yelled "Get your hands off him," to Linda showing up with her $250 fine and updated boundaries claim. Ray listened, voice dropping lower. "I've heard grumbles about that Linda woman before, but nothing solid to jump on. If you've got clear video, I'll handle it. Send it over now, and don't do anything dumb." I agreed, told Ethan to transfer the video to my phone so I could send it to Ray. He did it quick, hands still a little shaky from the ordeal. "What's Uncle Ray gonna do to those guys, Dad?" he asked, eyes bright with curiosity. "He'll show them what the law really is," I said, "not Linda's made-up nonsense." After sending the video, I sat across from Ethan, watching him replay the recording on his phone. "Listen to this, Dad," he said, turning up the volume. Beer Gut's voice came through clear as day. "Linda said, do it quick, this kid doesn't get to run." I smirked. "Oh, perfect, she just shot herself in the foot." Ethan nodded, but then looked up, voice serious. "Dad, I think she's got more coming. I've seen a drone flying over our land the past few days. I bet Linda's behind it." I frowned, recalling a weird buzzing I'd heard a couple nights back. A drone. "If you're right, that's more evidence," I said. "Keep an eye out, film it if you see it again. But be careful, don't let them spot you." Ethan nodded, stood up brushing his hands on his jeans. "I'm good, Dad, they're not getting my phone again." I clapped his shoulder. "Good. We'll play by the rules, but the real ones, not Whispering Pines Circus." He gave a small smile, heading back to the kitchen for water, but I could see a flicker of worry in his eyes. I didn't blame him. Getting grabbed by 2 strangers on your own land isn't something you shake off easy. I took a sip of cold coffee, thinking about Linda and her arrogant HOA crew. She thought she could redraw boundaries, send goons to harass us, and scare us with cheap paper threats. But she didn't know how smart Ethan is, didn't know we had video, and most importantly, she didn't know Ray's my brother. Ray isn't just a sheriff, he's the kind of guy who makes self-important types like Linda tremble when they face real law. I thought to myself, just wait Linda, you poked the hornet's nest, and the queen's coming. Linda Grayson never knew when to quit. That's what I realized, after the attack on Ethan and the confrontation on my porch. I thought she'd take a breather to regroup after I threatened legal action and sent the video to Ray. But no, the next morning, as I was brewing coffee in the kitchen, Ethan burst in, face flushed. "Dad, Linda's here. There's a bunch of them this time." I looked out the window and saw a scene I can only describe as the most insane clown show yet. Linda was leading a posse from Whispering Pines, hauling folding tables, lawn chairs and a big sign reading Whispering Pines First in sloppy red paint. I stepped onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching Linda direct her minions like a third-rate movie director. Two guys, not beer gut and nervous, but new ones, dragged a folding table and set it right in front of my gate, on my land. A middle-aged woman clutched a pitcher of lemonade, others carried lawn chairs and lined them up along my fence like they were settling in for a ball game. Linda stood in the middle, white tennis skirt on, holding a tiny gavel, the real kind, and a thick clipboard. "This is your last chance to cooperate," she declared, voice echoing all the way to the woods. "The board is prepared to rule on your continued presence in Whispering Pines." I sat down in my porch chair, sipped my coffee, and watched her like it was a comedy show. "You're trespassing on private property again," I said, voice even, "and this is the dumbest cosplay I've seen since the Halloween fair came to town." Linda's face turned red, cheeks puffing up like a tomato. "We're conducting a lawful HOA disciplinary hearing," she snapped. "You and your son have repeatedly violated community standards, trespassing, chicken noise, drone interference and gunfire." I raised an eyebrow at gunfire. "You mean when I shot down your spy drone filming my son?" I asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. Linda ignored me, flipping through her clipboard like she was reading charges in a real courtroom. Ethan stepped out of the house, phone in hand, secretly recording the whole scene. "Dad, they've lost it," he whispered, sitting beside me. Linda banged her gavel on the folding table, the clack-clack sound so ridiculous I nearly spat out my coffee. "The board proposes immediate removal of the unpermitted chicken flock, a $3,275 fine, and an emergency architectural review of your property," she read. Voice flat, like she'd rehearsed it all night. I finished my coffee, stood up slowly, and whistled. Ethan darted out from the coop side, carrying a stack of papers, land deeds, boundary surveys and yesterday's video. Linda glanced at Ethan, her face tightening. "That kid isn't allowed at this disciplinary hearing," she barked. Ethan handed me the papers, staring at Linda with a cold look I'd never seen from him before. I took a deep breath, stepped closer to the gate. "Let me make this clear," I said, voice calm but sharp. "This land is mine, it never has, never will, and isn't part of Whispering Pines. You have no authority here, you've trespassed, harassed a kid, impersonated officers, and now you're staging this fake court on my front yard like a cheap TV episode." Linda tilted her nose up. "We'll see what the sheriff says." She waved at one of her crew, an old guy clutching a phone, looking confused, like he didn't know what he was doing. I laughed hard, sat back down. "Oh, I'm looking forward to that," I said, winking at Ethan. Linda banged her gavel again, a loud clack ringing out like she was asserting power, but right then, I heard a siren in the distance. Not a golf cart, not Linda's SUV, but a police siren. The Whispering Pines crowd started to stir. The phone guy dropped his hands, the lemonade lady spilled her pitcher on the ground. Linda turned, face paling, but still trying to look confident. "The police will side with us," she said, voice wavering. I smirked, looking at Ethan. "Uncle Ray's timing is perfect, huh?" He nodded, still filming with his phone. I knew Linda thought she had everything under control, but she didn't expect Ray, my brother, the county sheriff, had seen the video and was on his way. She wanted to play fake law? Fine, I'd show her what real law looks like. After Linda Grayson's ridiculous court in front of my house, I knew she wouldn't stop, not because she was smart, but because she was too stubborn to see she was losing. The police siren from that late morning broke up the Whispering Pines crowd, but Linda didn't reappear right away. I figured she was plotting something, and Ethan was the first to catch it. The next afternoon, as I was fixing the fence near the coop, he ran out, phone in hand, face lit with excitement. "Dad, I got it," he said, pointing at the sky. I looked up, heard a faint buzz, a tiny drone, hovering over my land like a fly around a plate of food. "Drone?" I asked, recalling what Ethan said the day before about seeing it fly over. "Did you record it?" Ethan nodded, showing me the video on his phone, the drone swooping over the coop, the house, even catching me with the rake. "I've heard it since last week," he said, voice firm. "I bet Linda's using it to spy on us." I smirked, staring at the toy buzzing overhead. "Spying, huh? Then she just landed herself in big trouble." I'd heard Ray talk about drone harassment cases in the county. Federal laws strict, especially when they film or record without permission. I went inside, grabbed my phone, and called the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) straight up. The operator listened as I explained, the drone over private land, the attack on Ethan, Linda's court. "We've got video proof it's been flying over my property all week," I said. "And I bet it's got audio too." The guy on the line told me to send the evidence, promised they'd investigate. Ethan transferred the video to me, and I sent it off, thinking, just wait, Linda. You don't know what you've stepped into. Less than a day later, Linda showed up at my gate, this time without her posse or folding table. She stepped out of her Ladylin SUV, clutching her clipboard, face red like she'd just argued with someone. "You vandalized my property," she yelled, skipping any greeting. "That drone was legal surveillance, and you shot it down." I stood on the porch, hands on hips, smirking. "Legal? That was a spy drone, flying over private land without permission, filming my 16-year-old son. I shot it down because it broke the law, and you know it." Linda tilted her nose up, voice shaking with anger. "I was monitoring for compliance. You had no right to destroy my property." I stepped off the porch, looked her dead in the eye. "You had no right to fly a drone over my land, recording or filming without consent," I said. Voice cold as stone. "The FAA's got my video, and they're looking into it. You'll hear from them soon." Linda blinked, face paling a bit, but still trying to act confident. "I'll sue you for vandalism," she barked, then stormed back to her car, slamming the door before peeling out. Ethan stepped out from the kitchen, glass of water in hand, watching the SUV disappear. "Dad, she's freaking out," he said, smirking. "I bet the FAA's gonna hit her hard." I nodded, clapping his shoulder. "Yeah, and that's just the start. She thought she could play fake law, but now she's up against the real thing." He sat on the porch chair, replaying the drone video. "How'd you shoot it down so cool like that?" he asked, voice tinged with awe. I laughed hard. "I used to hunt with Uncle Ray as a kid. One shot's all it took." That night, I got an email from the FAA. They confirmed Linda's drone wasn't properly registered, flew over private land without permission, and sure enough, had audio equipment attached. "Serious FAA regulation violations," the email read. "We've issued a penalty notice to the owner, and are considering further action." I read it, laughed so loud, Ethan poked his head out of his room. "What's so funny, Dad?" I handed him the phone. "Linda just shot herself in the foot again," I said. "The FAA's gonna make her cry." I sipped my coffee, staring out at the dark field. Linda might think she's the queen of Whispering Pines, but she didn't expect me and Ethan to have video, Ray, and now the FAA on our side. She wanted a war, fine, but this time she'd lose everything. After the FAA confirmed Linda Grayson's drone broke the law, I knew she was on the edge. But Linda wasn't the type to give up without a fight, and that court in front of my house was the clearest proof. The police siren I heard late that morning wasn't random. Ray, my brother, had seen the video of Ethan's attack and decided to step in. Ethan and I sat on the porch, sipping coffee and lemonade, waiting. "Dad, what's Uncle Ray gonna do?" Ethan asked, fiddling with his phone. "He'll show them what real law is," I said, smirking. Not Linda's clown show. Less than an hour after the court, I heard engines on the gravel road, not one, but 3 police cars, lights flashing, sirens giving short warning bursts. Linda was still at my gate, gavel in hand, yelling something at the few minions left. The Whispering Pines crowd, the lemonade lady, the phone guy, a few in lawn chairs, started shifting as the cars pulled up. Ray stepped out of the lead vehicle, tall in his sheriff's uniform, sunglasses on, looking like he'd walked out of a cowboy movie. He scanned Linda's court, shaking his head slowly like a parent seeing a kid do something dumb. Linda turned, face paling but still trying to look confident. "Sheriff, thank God," she said, voice high-pitched. "We just finished our hearing. This man and his son have been harassing the neighborhood," and Ray raised a hand, not to hush her, but to signal the two deputies behind him. "Arrest the two from the golf cart," he said, voice low but sharp. "We've got video of them illegally detaining a kid yesterday." The deputies moved toward Beer Gut and Nervous, both back on the scene, standing near the golf cart like they hadn't learned a thing. Linda rushed forward, waving her clipboard. "Wait, no, you've got it wrong," she yelled. "They're HOA security." Ray turned to her, eyebrow raised under his shades. "HOA security isn't law enforcement," he said, voice flat. "They've got no right to detain anyone, especially a kid on land that's not theirs, in uniforms faking official authority." One deputy cuffed Beer Gut, the other paled, muttering, "We were just following Linda's orders." Ray glanced over. "Yeah, I heard that in the video." Ethan stood beside me, still filming the scene on his phone. "Dad, Uncle Ray's so cool," he whispered, eyes gleaming. I laughed hard, clapping his shoulder. "Yeah, he was born for this." Linda tried to wedge between the deputy and Beer Gut, screaming, "You can't do this, they're my security." Ray stepped up, towering over her. "You're lucky I'm not arresting you too," he said. "But the FAA's already contacted us about your drone. Filming and recording on private property without permission, that's a federal violation." Linda stammered, "But I was monitoring for compliance." Ray smirked, almost laughing. "You monitored by flying a drone over someone's house, recording this kid." He pointed at Ethan. "The FAA doesn't like that. You'll get your fine soon." Linda froze, arms dropping, clipboard hitting the ground. The Whispering Pines crowd started scattering. The lemonade lady hurriedly folded chairs. The phone guy slinked off. A few others muttered apologies to me before bolting. Ray turned to me and Ethan, taking off his sunglasses. "You two okay?" he asked. I nodded. "A lot better now, thanks to you." Ethan shrugged, smirking. "Really okay now." Ray looked back at Linda, now standing alone by her wobbly folding table. "This ends today," he said, voice ringing like a verdict. "You're done harassing this family. Next time I get a call about you, it better be from your lawyer." He signaled the deputies, who hauled Beer Gut and Nervous into the cars, cuffs clanking. Linda watched, face white, then turned to me, eyes blazing. "This isn't over," she growled, before stomping to her SUV. I smirked. "Go ahead and try." As the police cars pulled away with her goons, the Whispering Pines crowd vanished, leaving the Whispering Pines first sign lying lonely in the grass. Ethan turned off his phone, laughing hard. "Dad, I think she's out of moves." I shook my head. "Not yet, son, but she doesn't know how bad she just lost." Ray walked up to the porch, clapping my shoulder. "You kept me busy, Tom," he said, smirking. "But that crew needed a lesson." I nodded, thinking to myself that Linda might think she's a queen, but Ray and the FAA just smashed her fake kingdom. And I knew she wouldn't go down without one more dirty play. After Ray brought the cops and the FAA jumped on the drone issue, I thought Linda Grayson would slink off to lick her wounds. But I underestimated her stubbornness. Linda wasn't the type to quit. She's the kind who'd burn a village down just to prove she's right. That night, after Ray left, Ethan and I sat on the porch, staring at the dark field. "Dad, what's she gonna do next?" Ethan asked, fiddling with his phone. "Probably something stupid," I said, sipping cold coffee. "She doesn't know how to stop." I was right. The next night, I got home late after a run to town for supplies. As I turned onto the gravel road, I saw flashing lights, not police, but a tow truck, parked right by my fence. I jumped out, heart pounding, and saw my pickup, the one I own outright, parked in my own yard, hooked up to the tow rig. The driver, a middle-aged guy in a baseball cap, was tightening the cables. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" I yelled, running up. He flinched, turned. This is an HOA order. The truck's violating overnight parking rules. I stood there, staring at my pickup on my land, not a public road. Overnight parking, this is my yard, not Whispering Pines Street. He scratched his head, mumbled, "She said the new map includes this lot. I'm just following orders." I smirked. "She, Linda Grayson." He nodded, handed me a hastily printed sheet, with Linda's scrawled signature. I laughed hard, tore it in half. "Put my truck down now, or I'm calling the cops," I said, voice cold as stone. He fumbled, released the cables, and backed the tow truck out of my gate. I went inside, called Sarah Brooks, my cousin, a land lawyer in Austin, who I'd texted after Ethan's attack. Sarah picked up on the first ring, voice sharp despite the late hour. "Tom, let me guess, Linda did something stupid again." I told her about the tow truck, voice thick with frustration. "She tried to tow my truck, claiming parking violations, even though it's on my land." Sarah went quiet for a second, then chuckled, the kind of laugh that gave me chills. "All right," she said, voice cutting. "Now we go big. Send me your land docs and Ethan's videos. I'll file an emergency restraining order tomorrow morning." The next day, Sarah did exactly that. She filed with the county court, requesting an order barring Linda and Whispering Pines from further harassment, citing unlawful interference with private property and attempted theft. Less than 6 hours later, the judge signed it, a real document, not Linda's cheap printouts, forbidding Linda from contacting, surveilling or enforcing anything against me and Ethan. I held the order, laughed hard. She's out of moves. But that wasn't all. I went to the tow company's office with the order, demanded the manager. The guy, a tired man with a coffee-stained shirt, looked at the papers and paled. "She said it was a legal order," he muttered. "Even showed an ID card, said you violated HOA rules." I raised an eyebrow. "ID card? What'd it look like?" He shrugged. "Like homemade stuff laminated, cheap clip." I laughed hard. Of course it was. They released my truck immediately, with an apology letter and security cam footage, Linda standing there, arms crossed, watching the tow hook my pickup. At the same time, the FAA sent a full report. Turns out Linda didn't just have one drone, she had three, two with audio, one with thermal imaging. She flew over my house, the neighbor's backyard, even filmed a barbecue with kids. Violated half a dozen federal laws, the report said. They hit her with a hefty fine, and were considering criminal charges for recording minors without consent. I sent the report to Sarah, who forwarded it straight to the county prosecutor. Whispering Pines started crumbling. HOA members bailed in droves, some quit publicly. One guy called me to apologize, saying, "We didn't know Linda was that crazy." The HOA newsletter stopped, golf carts vanished from the roads. Linda was a ticking time bomb now, no one dared go near her. Ethan and I sat on the porch, watching the field grow quiet again. "Dad, she's really done," Ethan said, laughing hard. I nodded. "Yeah, but she did it to herself. We just stood still and let her run into the wall." After Linda Grayson got the court's restraining order, and the FAA's punch, Whispering Pines fell apart like a sandcastle at high tide. HOA members fled, the club got sold off, and Linda, the self-proclaimed queen, became a pariah no one would touch. But I didn't just want to win, I wanted to leave a mark. I called a woodworker friend, had him craft a 12-foot rooster from red pine, wings spread, beak open like it's crowing. I painted it red, white and blue, American flag colors, and planted it on the edge of my land, facing Linda's house. At its base, I bolted a brass plaque, "Freedom from Whispering Pines, Linda rest in peace." I unveiled it on a weekend morning, the same time Linda used to hold her nonsense meetings. Ethan dragged out lawn chairs, neighbors stopped by, some with coffee, one lady with muffins. We stood there, admiring Liberty Cluck, like it was a victory monument. Linda stormed out of her house, bathrobe on, eyes wild. She read the plaque, screamed, "This is harassment." I smirked. "No, this is art, free speech, you know, the law you keep ignoring." A neighbor laughed hard, "Best rooster I've ever seen." Linda turned, no one backing her, then slunk back inside. Whispering Pines officially dissolved soon after. The remaining board voted to disband, citing irreparable reputational damage. Linda put her house up for sale 2 weeks later, but no one bit. Her infamy had spread through Oak Hollow. She finally sold at a loss to an out-of-state couple, who laughed hard at Liberty Cluck and dubbed it Texas Titan. Linda left, her Lady Lynn SUV tires kicking up gravel dust one last time, and I knew she wouldn't be back. Life for me and Ethan went back to peaceful. I raised chickens, grilled steaks, sat on the porch listening to the wind through the woods. Ethan filmed the flock, joking I was Oak Hollow's sheriff. Neighbors dropped by sometimes, shook my hand, thanked me for standing up to Linda. Ray came over one night, brought beer, laughed hard. You made that statue to piss her off, huh? I shrugged, just a little fun, bro. He clapped my shoulder. Good, she needed to know how she lost. The best part wasn't the restraining order or the HOA's collapse, it was the look on Linda's face when she realized she'd lost everything: power, control, and the fear she used to instill in others. Liberty Cluck stood tall, crowing loud whenever someone drove by, a reminder not to mess with the Carvers. Ethan and I kept living, no drones, no goons, just quiet and laughter rolling across Oak Hollow's fields. The story fake HOA bullies detained my son, didn't know his uncle runs the sheriff's office, reflects a very real aspect of life in the US today: the clash between individual rights and self-appointed power groups, like HOAs, that sometimes overstep their bounds. In America, where land ownership and personal freedom are prized, situations like Tom Carver facing off with Linda Grayson aren't rare. Linda, with her arrogance and actions like using drones to spy, faking authority through goons, or trying to tow Tom's truck, represents those individuals or entities who abuse petty power to impose their will on others. In contrast, Tom and Ethan embody resilience, using technology, Ethan's videos, and the law, Ray, the FAA, Sarah, to protect their rights, a common thread in modern American society, where citizens often lean on the legal system and community to fight back. The lesson from this story isn't just don't get bullied, it's the specific how-to for dealing with similar real-life situations. First, like Tom staying calm and calling Ray after Ethan's attack, seek support from those with authority, friends, family, or law enforcement, rather than confronting it alone. Second, Ethan filming every incident, from the attack to Linda's drone, shows the power of evidence in the tech age. In the US today, a video can flip a legal situation, like how it got the FAA to fine Linda and Ray to arrest her goons. Finally, Tom's Liberty Cluck rooster is a reminder that sometimes, after winning, you can stake your ground creatively and humorously, both to lift your spirit and send a message to the community. In real life, when facing Lindas out there, from nosy neighbors to overreaching groups, be patient, gather proof, find allies, and don't hesitate to stand up for your rights, like Tom did in Oak Hollow. If you enjoyed the story of how the Carvers took down Linda and Whispering Pines, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next hilarious and dramatic battles. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video, where we'll dive into real-life dramas, even wilder than Oak Hollow.